So welcome everybody to the presentation today. My name is Steven Threadgold and I am the Global Product Manager. Some of those who have known me in the past, I have slightly changed my role, but I'm still doing the same thing. So talking to local teams, making sure that we have a good strategy moving forwards. But I also now have a slightly wider remit to make sure that we have a good strategy that fits in with our sort of parent organization, Sonoma. But the good news for everybody on this call is we are still laser focused on trying to drive up the usability of itslearning. And what I'm going to take you through now, you are the first guys, as you were this time last year, those of you that can that joined that face-to-face conference, you're going to be the first ones to see this new roadmap. The roadmap has been created together with our customers. We use the ideas portal. We talk to the local teams, who of course your representatives. We talk to individual schools, and we also look at the KPIs that power itslearning. So we have a lot of anonymous KPIs. So we know, for instance, how many teachers in Denmark looked at a plan last week or added to a plan last week. We don't know who. We don't know, where and when, but we know that that happened. So we have all of these anonymous KPIs that give us a really good idea about how people are using itslearning. So a couple of quick comments. It's been a very challenging year. I think it's been a challenging year for you guys as educators and for us as a education provider. I'm sure it's been a very challenging year personally for everybody as well. I know Denmark has not been as badly affected by COVID as some countries. But it's still had a massive effect on students, universities, colleges. Everybody has had, a sort of knock-on effect from COVID. And it's really affected us as a company as well. Just so you know, we're now providing our services at about 400% up on this time last year. So for a typical customer, they're using itslearning 4 times more than they were this time last year. So we have changed slightly the way our development works. We have moved some of the guys and girls that were working on new developments have moved to uptime and scaling of the platform. Some of the people that were working on some Google and Teams features have been moved to make sure we have good integration with, for instance, Teams meetings. We've integrated Zoom in a better way, and we're also integrating in some of our other markets homegrown solutions where they're concerned about sharing data. So one of the challenges we have is the dates in the roadmap I'm giving you today are as accurate as they can be predicted, but they may change, and probably more than any other roadmap we've presented before. I know that's a challenge. I know you'd like to see this functionality sooner rather than later, but it's just a new way of working. And for us, prioritizing uptime and making sure that students and teachers can get into itslearning is our biggest and most important task that we have at the moment. That said, we do have changes coming within itslearning. I'm going to go through each of these. If you have any questions, as I said, just jot them down and we can come back to them at the end. And we'll make sure that we share this presentation, and we will update the online version that sits on itslearning.com. That's slightly out of date. As I said, you guys are seeing a brand new version. So one of the things that we're doing this year is we are swapping the built-in version of Office for itslearning. So you've seen those built-in tools where you can just click on the link and create a Word document or a PowerPoint document. Those are currently hosted on something called Whoopee, which is a Microsoft system where basically we run the Microsoft cloud within itslearning. We are changing that, so it'll then be hosted within the same geographical area, but it'll be part of the Microsoft Office system. So you don't need to create a user account or things like that, but rather than it being a tool that sits on our servers and it looks like Microsoft and feels like Microsoft and comes from Microsoft, but is slightly out of keeping with the version you're used to working to from home and other places, and possibly in your institutions as well. So we're going to move it up to this better version, and that will change things like the templating, the spell checking, the grammar checking. Some of the tools will be more advanced, so you'll see a much better improved service, but it'll work in the same way. So that's something that'll happen transparently in the background. Hopefully your users will just see a new, better version of Word, Excel and PowerPoint as opposed to any other changes. So it's a nice system, and we also think it's going to increase the speed a bit as well. So that's why we're doing this. So rather than us hosting Microsoft Office, it's going to be directly integrated with Microsoft Office in the cloud. Calendar and Google, we've made some changes to Google. We'll have integration with Google Calendar, and this is a nice little video. I'll set this running as we talk, so you can just see it run through. So what we're doing is opening the, pushing all of the events that are in itslearning into Google Calendar, and then making sure that you can access any of those without logging in again. And we have the same thing coming for Microsoft and Outlook, but that's going to be coming a little bit later. So Google is just waiting for us to be able to roll it out. We have a lot of Google work that we've been working on for the past 12 months that's just waiting for us to roll it out, and we're hoping to get that done in one of the releases before Christmas. I think we're going to have 3 releases before Christmas. We've got one coming in early October, one following not far behind in November, and then we're trying to get one more in by December. So when we're talking about Q4, it might be late, so early October, it might be November, and it might be December. We don't quite know which of these is going to go into which. Other Google improvements, another thing that we have made sure it's good. This probably doesn't affect you guys very much, but it's more important for schools that have been using Google Classroom and are now moving up to itslearning. You can do an import from Google Classroom. We know that some teachers have been using Google Classroom because it's free and it's available and so on. They've taken it as far as they can. It might be that they're, you know, the people that are, you know, running the schools and so on want them to move to a larger learning platform, and we're now making it very easy just to import from Google Classroom. And what that will do is it'll reach out to the Google Classroom that you have access to through our Google sign-on, so you've already signed on and so on, and then it'll pull through things like the assessments and so on. And this is so people can hit the ground running, moving from Google Classroom into itslearning. Because we're doing a lot more in the cloud, we're revamping all of the icons all across itslearning. This is something that'll be happening at the same time as those other Google and Microsoft changes that we were talking about. So you'll now see standardized icons that match the ones that we are supposed to use. So in other words, the Google ones match the latest from Google, and the Microsoft ones match the latest from Microsoft. And we're also changing zips and images and so on, so they're more recognizable. It's a bit hard to see, but it makes things like looking at the planet a lot easier. So I can see at a glance, you know, what each of these are. So I can see at a glance that that's a sound file, and I can see at a glance that that's a PDF. A little hard to see on that picture, but you get the idea. And that'll be across all of itslearning, and that's because more people are using the cloud and cloud icons. Those of you that are using Teams and are using Teams, you know, slightly more energetically than others, one of the things that we're looking at is a good way to include itslearning within Teams. So at the moment, I can grab content from within Teams and SharePoint and put it in itslearning. But as we see more people using both Teams for things like communication and online lessons, we want it so you can go straight from your team into itslearning. So what we will do is, if I have a course in itslearning, you'll have the option to create a course in Teams. So those of you that may have challenges getting a good Teams integration that's creating all of your courses automatically, you can actually use itslearning to create those courses. So every course in itslearning becomes a team, and then we will sync the users across, and then you'll be able to go straight from within the team into itslearning, and then assuming that you're using your ADFS logon, so single sign-on, you can go straight from your Teams environment into itslearning. So it means I can do things like my online lessons within Teams, and then jump straight in and see my plan and my updates and so on from Teams within itslearning. This is something that is piloting at the moment. We're getting lots of interesting feedback. We've learned that lots of people use Teams in many different ways. So we're looking at some minor tweaks and changes to this, and we hope to have this out by the end of the year. So again, this is all about, if you use Teams, especially for things like online classes and so on, and itslearning, you can get a much tighter integration. So you can use the things that you like in Teams, like easy access to your Office documents and online lessons and things like that, and calls and things. And then you can jump straight in and use the features of itslearning, like the plans and things like that. So at the moment, we've sort of divided it into things like files and plans and so on. Then I can jump from those straight into normal itslearning. So those are the things that we have coming for cloud. Cloud is an important set of features for us, but we also know that people are using the online editor a lot. We know that people are using our editor, and there's a few little quirks about it in terms of drag and drop. So one of the things that we're doing is we are updating the version of the what you see is what you get editor. We're modernizing it. We're making it a lot easier to add and embed things like YouTube videos. There'll be a smaller taskbar that's sort of more similar to other online tools that you use. You can see more icons, but we're just showing the base ones to make it easier to produce material that's more mobile and tablet friendly. So what we've got there in that image, as you can see, are the standard sort of, things like emboldening and bullet points and so on, and embedding that's supported by most tablets and so on. I can still do things like tables and so on. They're now going to be hidden under the more, so I can still do very advanced layouts. But the good thing is I can do drag and drop. So at the moment it's very difficult to upload. You've got to find your image and upload it and so on. In the new WYSIWYG, you can just drag and drop. Also, there'll be better keyboard support. So, if you start, especially when you're using special characters and extended character sets, obviously some of the, symbols that are in, the dance language and in other languages as well. It's going to sort of function a lot better on mobile devices, so on tablet too. So here we can see, editing a page. You can see you've now got a lot more real estate and a lot more layout. And this will happen, this new version of the editor will be embedded all across itslearning. It's one of the big changes. I think we spoke about it briefly last year, but now this is coming into fruition. And it does work really well. We'll put some videos up in the next few weeks on our YouTube site. We've done the videos, but unfortunately the team decided to pick some comical pictures of some of the product owner teams, and they're not really right when you're dragging and dropping weird pictures. So what we're trying to do now is get some professional looking pictures from our developers, get those into a video, then you can see this working. More importantly, share it with your teachers so they can see these improvements are coming. They're just around the corner. Test tool. This is a ever-present item on our roadmap. It's been really difficult finishing the test tool. Some of you are already using the new test tool. If you've got the sort of pages you can see here with the scores and assessment and the export and things like that, you're using the new test tool. But we still have a lot of customers using the old test tool, and one of the reasons that we've not moved everybody yet is there's some types of tests that aren't in the old tool. We need to finish moving those across to the new test tool, and then everybody will be moved across automatically. I actually think most of the UCs in Denmark are using the new test tool, which is great. It works on mobile, it's faster, it's quicker, and it's better. I'm really sorry that this still hasn't arrived yet. It was one of the teams that we moved on to scalability, so we hope to get those back sometime in the autumn, and then they've got a few question types to add, some more testing to do, and then early next year we want to start moving everybody across onto this new test tool. Those of you that have used it know it's good, and we want to get to a much better place on that. And being able to share it into the library as well, I think, is one of those fantastic features that we hope to see a lot of people using. So it's going to be early 2021. I've not put Q1, Q2. That's because until we know what time or when this team come back from the scalability work they're working on, we don't know exactly when that's going to come out. E-portfolio, we talked about this a bit last year. It's been piloted. I think it's been piloted at least with one of the uses in Denmark. That should come out in one of the releases before Christmas. Updated the UI. It's a lot easier to create portfolios. You now get your choice of backgrounds. It's a lot easier to make a portfolio public, so you can invite people in to comment on it. It's just a huge, improvement over the existing portfolio. So I can see there in the icons, I've got a share, so I can click on that and share it. I can remove it, I can edit it easily, and I can do all that from the icons on the page. So it just really lifts it and sort of, makes it a modern looking system. We want students to be, proud of when they're showing their work outside or inside itslearning for it to look better. So, we really like to get this to a good place. It's been a little time coming. There's a few things we just need to fix. I think those are now done, developed, complete, so we should be able to roll that out in one of the releases before Christmas. Integration options. We're trying very hard to expand our integration options. We're currently supporting LTI 1. That is in the process of being moved up to LTI 1.3. Which is a new standard. It's not as prevalent in Europe as perhaps the press and looking at some websites would believe. We've actually found very few people using LTI 1.3, but we know it's an important step up. So our development team are moving us to LTI 1.3. We're hoping to get that done later this year or early into next, and then fully supporting LTI Advantage. That's important because it allows us to quickly and easily share assignments and grade services, as they're called, with third parties, to share what's called the rostering. So from LTI, if you allow it, you can, for instance, auto-provision a third-party tool with just the people within your course, and you can give grades back from the third-party tool into the assignment portfolio. So we have APIs for doing that already, but they are sort of non-standard, the ones we created many years ago. So those exist. And what we're trying to do now is follow the international standard LTI Advantage. So I think that's going to be into 2021 being realistic, but it's going to really help as LTI becomes more prevalent. It's a bit of a slow burn here in Europe. I sit on the IMS Europe board, and we're constantly looking at ways to enthuse people and get more people using it. I'm sure there will be far more support as time goes on. So move up to LTI 1.3 first, then our full support for LTI Advantage. And then the same team through the rest of 2021 are going to be looking at how to make grade passback better, how to get grades out of itslearning. We support one roster, which again is an IMS standard for providing grades. At the moment, we're just supporting final grade, but we'd like to support the next version of one roster that allows you to return learning objectives and whether they're passed or not. So that's what we mean by better grade passback, expanding what we're doing at the moment. And we're working with a couple of providers across Europe on more robust ways to import timetable data as well. So that's what we're doing in terms of integration, LTI first, and then those other things. And again, don't have an ETA on that because the team is currently working on a few other things, including some Google stuff. So as soon as we get those into a good place, we'll be able to increase or make these estimations a bit more accurate. One of the things that we want to have out towards the end of the year is our enhanced app. We are making changes to the app. We're also releasing a parent app for pilot soon and into next year. I know that's not of great interest to most of the people on this call, but the parent app is coming. The itslearning app, the important things are better cloud integration, so I can open things like Google Documents directly from the app, a much better view of the calendar, and then also if I use the app to do things like open a calendar item, we will track that within the 360 reports. It's one of the areas where it's not tracked at the moment because we're using the built-in calendar within the devices. We're going to change that. So if I use the calendar a lot and do a lot of calendar changes through the app, those will all be tracked. So the most important thing is working better with the cloud and being able to open things like I don't know, a Google document and work on it within the Google app directly from the itslearning app. Quite complex things to do, there's the sort of app-to-app communication, but that's what we want to try and do. We want to make it easier to work on the productivity tools within the itslearning app. Another change that we have coming out in one of the next few releases is something that a lot of teachers have been asking for. It was very high on our ideas portal, and that's to make it easier to assign work to groups and students within my course, especially when I've got multiple groups and maybe students working at different levels. So what we're doing is making sure that whenever you're creating a task or an assignment, you'll get a new interface or a new pop-up which is called assign to, and then I can say, for instance, assign it to these groups 1, 2, 3 and to these users 1, 2, 3, 4, however many I want, and I can even say which teacher is going to assess them if I've got multiple tutors working within the same group. So as well as being able to say that you know, I'm going to send these 5 assignments to these 5 students, I can then flag them to be assessed in the follow-up tasks, which I'll show you in a second, by these tutors. So what we're trying to do is make assigning and marking work easier. It works for tasks and it works for assignments. And it goes hand in hand with another feature, which is the follow-up list. So if I get assigned something by another teacher, for instance, look at these works, then I can see these in what we call the follow-up tasks. So rather than just saying there's an assignment and there's 50 things to do on it, we're trying to simplify how teachers see work that's coming in. So I can see, for instance, you know, I've got 4 or 5 assignments and how many items have I got to, or how many things have I got to assess within those. So this will be across the It's Learning course and the It's Learning updates page, and this will be seen by all teachers. We're not changing it for students. They'll simply see what tasks are due today, what tasks are due tomorrow, what tasks are due in the future. But we're changing the teacher's version to be far more focused on grouping them together and then saying how much work there is to do. So if I've got, for instance, 100 students who've submitted a piece of work, I'll see I've got, you know, and I've not marked any, I'll have 0 of 100. So I know there's a lot to do there. So what we're trying to do is give teachers, you know, more help in organizing their own work. So it's a new way of working. It's being piloted next year. We're still doing trials with groups of teachers at the moment. It's being piloted next year, so we expect it to be there and usable before we go back to school 2021. I know that's a long time away, but there's a couple of things like this that are a bit of a slow burn. Whether it'll look exactly like this, I don't know. That's because we haven't quite decided yet, but you will be able to see how many students have submitted, how many, for instance, maybe haven't. That's another thing we're looking at. Should we show how many have submitted, how many haven't, or how many, if it's gone past the deadline, how many were past the deadline. There's a lot of minor things that we want to try and do. But we want to make it easier for teachers. Another thing that we're working on, and this has got a long deadline again, but we're actually going to break it into 2 parts, is we know that working with master courses, especially with plans, can be a bit of a challenge. Currently, if I have a plan and I share that via a template, and then I add new items to the plan, by design, those are not replicated. It's not a bug, it is just, it's a feature. So it's something that was decided by the person that created that a long time ago. And that's because we didn't want to go adding things to plans, but we weren't too bothered if we added things to resources. We know that can be a little bit of a challenge. So one of the things that we want to do when we get some bandwidth after the sort of big back to school push is improve it to allow updates and maybe even deletes made to a plan that will then be pushed out to the courses that come from it. So that's something that we're looking at as a sort of a medium-term change. And then long-term, we've had some really good feedback from customers like Tech and some of the other customers in Denmark. So we're looking at all of that, and we're trying to come from a better solution of how to work with courses and templates and plans. So what we want to do is fix the immediate challenges, and we'll try and do that when we're out of this current back to school push, and then we'll be circling back, and the product owners will be circling back to get more feedback on how we improve this in general, and then we'll have a update that'll be ready for next year. So in other words, it'll be released sometime, I guess, late spring, early summer, so it can then be used next year. But before that, we want to improve the plan updating. So I know that's on a lot of people's minds. This is what we plan to do at the moment. Our plan for plans, if you like. Things might change, as I said, but we want to try and fix this perceived issue of plans not being updated, and then look at a better solution. So I've got more control over how things are pushed out. We can't change it at the moment. We don't plan to change it at the moment. And one of the reasons is you may think you have a lot of templates within your school. There are literally hundreds of thousands of templates and millions of items shared via templates in some of our bigger US customers, and we don't want to make changes to the templating system at the moment because they're in the process of pushing those out. So there's a genuine reason why we don't want to make this change now. It's not because we're not listening, it's because the risk of doing it is so high we might disrupt what's going on at the moment, where literally, I think last year it was something like 18 million items created by templates in Houston. This year we could be looking at 5 or 6, even 7 times that. So apologies if we're not going to work on this straight away. We will work on it as soon as back to school and stuff is out of the way, fix to make it better, and then we'll look for a better solution ready for back to school. Last thing we have coming, which is for back to school. This is something that we've been piloting. It's gone through 2-3 iterations. It probably won't look like what you see on the screen. It'll change. But we want to really enhance Planner, to make Planner the place to structure work and the place for students to be able to see what's current for them and how far through they've got the plan, or how far through the plan they've got, their previous plans, maybe plans without dates, and then also to be able to view this work by topics. So you can see here in this page, I've got my plans, I've got my current plans that I'm working on at the moment. I can see through that line how far through the materials I've got, and I can see how many of the items I've looked at or completed. Gives me a little indication there. And I can see what upcoming plans are coming. And of course, these could be time released and date released. So, you know, I can show students all of the plans. I can show them some of the plans. I can show them previous plans. I might have some without date, so I can filter by that. And then if you use topics, I can shift the view and view everything by topics, which will then help with revision. So if I was revising not the I, but the earth, I can look at topics, I can look at the topics associated with the earth, and then I can see all of the resources that have been tagged to that. And that gives me, you know, a real help when I'm looking at, you know, understanding that topic as opposed to what we covered in that week or the other week. So this is a really big change to plans. We also want to make it easier for teachers to create them and edit them and work on them. So it's easier, for instance, you know, there'll be a little button at the top for the visibility of this item. I can see the learning objectives on the side, and in fact, if I'll just move this out of the way, and then you can see, rather than having the sort of you know, matrix view, I'll say we're working on this plan, on this topic, on this lesson, and then you'll see it's much easier to add content. I just click the add, then I can pick from Google or Office or wherever. I can add a new lesson there, and then I can use the little handles on the side to move things around. So we're hoping this will make, you know, plans easier to create, and students will get a much better experience from them, so it'll structure courses better. And one of the reasons we're doing this is long term, not on this year's roadmap, so from now until sort of, you know, late spring. We're sort of thinking, so this roadmap is sort of covering now until, yeah, I guess sort of late spring, and then we'll have a new one starting in the summer. Longer term, we're looking at ways to have students be able to start a plan at the beginning, but it doesn't matter when they started it. So having a more sort of student-paced view of this work. And what we want to do first is make it easier to create plans and create this structure. So I can see here the concept of my current future. It would be great if a student could start on a particular date, ignore the little dates we see in there. They go on from week to week to week to week. You know, you can see how far through the plan they've got in some sort of master view. They can see how far they've got. And then they may take some sort of test or exam at the end, testing them on the materials, which is why they can then sort it by topic. And we're looking at ways now of releasing people from the concept of it must be done on this week and everybody goes at the same pace. But to do that, we need to get a good structure that we can then open up. So that's one of the reasons we're doing this. We'll be talking to customers next year, especially about, you know, this concept of releasing students from the concept of having all to start on the same day and finish on the same day. Because we see, you know, 2, 3, 4 years down the line, there'll be a lot more of that. We need to make sure that itslearning can support it. So one of the reasons we're changing plan, simplifying design, engaging with students is so we can almost release them from the structure that, you know, the plan puts on them, so they can learn, you know, far more their own pace. And of course, within the plan, you'll still have, you know, all of the resources and the things that have been created, and we'll have tests because they can be shared in library and so on. So that's what we've got.